Namaste and welcome to this video on Pranayama and meditation, step by step, for beginners to advanced. So 3 things to think about in terms of beginning your practices with meditation, and that is the place, time, and frequency. Place meaning you want to find a place where you can reserve just for meditation. So it can be a little corner in your room, it can be a separate room, it doesn't have to take up a lot of space. I have just a tiny little, I have a statue here of Lord Shiva, candles, incense. It sets up a vibration, and the vibration gets stronger and stronger, making it much easier for you to continue with your practices. So also, there's talk about which direction to face. I think probably the best direction is facing the rising sun or the setting sun, so either east or west. So that's the first thing. Select a place that you can establish, and that vibration will begin to make it easier for you to continue with your practices. The other thing is time. We were talking about the rising and setting sun. Those are ideal times to meditate. And there's something in yoga called the Brahma Muhurta time, which is between 4 and 7. But the actual time is actually 30 minutes before sunrise, because you're moving from darkness to light. And we have a grander cycle in the winter solstice, where on the day of the winter solstice, the sun returns at the point where it's furthest away. Those are called liminal moments, and those liminal moments are very conducive to stepping out of time, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to step out of time. We're trying to move away from the relative existence of our waking consciousness to the state of infinity, or what they call Kaivala. And that just takes practice. The mind tendency is to be distracted. The mind's tendency is to think by association. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to master the mind and keep it steady and keep it calm, so that we can have this spiritual experience, what they call Samadhi, where we transcend human consciousness and realize our immortal self. The other thing, so those moments are very conducive, because the prana and the energy at those moments, at sunrise and sunset, 30 minutes before sunrise and sunset, those moments are very conducive to meditation, because the atmosphere is very calm. And again, we're trying to calm the mind. There's lots of prana in the environment, because as the sun rises, the sun being the center of energy and life-giving force, as the sun rises, it sends a flood of prana and energy, across the horizon, and that floods the environment with a lot of prana, and which is again conducive to keeping the mind steady and keeping the mind calm. So actually today, and by the way, happy Diwali Day. This is the Festival of Lights for people in India. It's a very important day. We're all trying to get out of ignorance and get into light. And this is one of the main reasons for the festival today. So happy Diwali Day. It's also the eve before the Feast of Samhain, or what we know as Halloween. To the Celts, this was the Celtic New Year, because it was the beginning of the dark. And here we have another liminal moment. Liminal moments are those spaces in between time, are those spaces in between one ontological plane and another. And it's in those spaces that we are able to access our spiritual self. So this was the time of the year when the veil between the seen and the unseen was the thinnest. And this was the time of the year that, especially people who meditate, you could further your meditation practices, because the goal is to achieve Samadhi. That's the final goal of yoga. Samadhi means to transcend human consciousness. Samadhi means to, there's many samadhis, and if you look at my previous video on Patanjali, I talk about these different samadhis, but they're like gateways to the self that you have to pass through to get to the self. So this time of the year is ideal for beginning your meditation practices, because the environment is so conducive. The veil that separates us from the truth is thinnest at this time of the year. So it's much more conducive to meditation, and it's a really good time to start, and that's why I thought I would do the video today. And not only that, but it is the Festival of Light, Diwali in India, and I thought it would be a good time to begin today. The other point I wanted to make was frequency. When you're trying to master something, if you're an athlete and you're trying to get ready for the Olympics, you're going to practice every day. The success of this depends on the frequency and whether your practice is mild, medium, or intense. The more intense the practice, the more frequent the practice, once or twice a day, probably twice a day. The more intense, the more frequent, the more quickly you will achieve this level of realization. Yes, it can happen very, very quickly, as it did to me, because something happened to me to just push me in that direction. And it wasn't long before I had broken through the physical barrier. So, those three things to think about. Establish a place in your home where it's just for meditation. Try to meditate at times of the day that is more conducive to meditation, early morning and in the evening, during twilight hours, or again, other conducive times because the atmosphere is so quiet. The morning is stronger, of course. And then make sure that your practices are regular and much more intense. If you wish to achieve this state of liberation and freedom, if you wish to achieve this, you might want to consider intensifying your practices. Okay, now, the reason why I included pranayama with this meditation workshop is because pranayama, being on the fourth limb of Patanjali's Ashtanga yoga, is really the beginning of the higher yoga. It's really when we are beginning to move inwards. And pranayama, the Pranamaya kosha, the dimension or sheath, one of the dimensions or sheaths that surrounds the soul, lies in between the physical body and the mental body. So by the control of prana, we're automatically controlling the mind. So it's actually one of the techniques that Patanjali mentions for realization, the inhalation and exhalation of breath. So it seems much more, I would highly recommend that before you do your meditation, you do some pranayama, because that will automatically calm the mind and prepare your mind for the concentration that you are trying to achieve that will eventually lead to meditation. So, I would suggest beginning your meditation practices with two pranayama techniques, and they're called Kapalabhati. Kapalabhati is rapid diaphragmatic breathing. I also did a video on pranayama, rapid diaphragmatic breathing. If you've been practicing this for a long time, you should move into the advanced stage, which is called Bastrika. And Bastrika is another term for bellows, because there's no differentiation between the exhalation and inhalation. You're just constantly pumping oxygen into your system. Now, the benefit of that is that it actually cleans the mind out. Yes, pranayama will actually purify the deeply rooted memories or some scars. And those form the veil that prevents you from seeing the truth and having an understanding of your immortal self. So pranayama is one of the most important methods for cleansing the frontal lobes of the brain where the memory lie. And of course, the more you do this practice and the more you cleanse the mind, the more the mind becomes less dense and easier to master. So Kapalabhati, and the other one I recommend is Nadi Suddhi, because what Nadi Suddhi does, it's called the equalizer breath, because it equalizes the flows of energy between the right and left brain. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create balance these forces, the male and female forces, have to be balanced, have to come together. And once they come together and balance, then you experience this oneness and this flood of kundalini that will rush through your sushumna. But that can only happen once those two forces are in harmony and balance, because if the kundalini is reached before that and you have an excessive male energy, do you see what could happen? The female energy tempers the male energy, and the male energy supports the female energy. So these two forces have to be unified. And again, we're trying to balance the mind. As I mentioned in an earlier video on pranayama, there were studies done by Dr. Pierre Henry that demonstrated that too much left brain emphasis can lead to schizophrenia, and too much right brain emphasis can lead to depression. So again, we're trying to heal the mind. We're trying to balance and heal the mind. And so Nadi Shuddhi, the equalizer breath, balances the flows of energy between the right and left hemisphere, and it also calms and cleanses the nervous system. As you begin these practices, you may find yourself shaking a little bit. You may find yourself sweating. This is all an indication that your nerves are not strong. Continue with the practice and your nervous system will become very, very strong. Again, because the Pranamaya kosha, the body of energy, lies between the body and the mind. The more you build up that body of energy, the more you are enhancing all your physical biological processes, because prana is involved in all those physical biological processes. In fact, there's apparently thousands and thousands of nadis, pathways for prana throughout your body, and any blockages in those pathways can result in disease. So again, by practicing pranayama, you're not only cleansing the mind out, but you're also going to be enhancing your biological processes. And this is critical for optimal health as well. So I think it's very important to begin your, before you begin to meditate, to do 15 minutes. It depends how much pranayama you've been doing. If you're just beginning, you want to start off slowly and build, because this is prana. You want to slowly build up the prana. You can build up your pranic body. That's why people who have been into this for a while, they're maybe older people, but they seem to have so much energy because they've built up their energy body. And you can slowly build this up, but you don't want to force it, because as you're building it up, you're going to be strengthening your nervous system to handle it. And once you've built up enough of this prana, then the kundalini, which is dormant in the spine, gets released. Then you're able to handle the kundalini release. So that's what you want to do. You want to build up slowly. So it really depends. In the beginning, you could just start off with 100 reps, like 100 reps 3 times, and then slowly build up. And when you feel that you've built up enough, then you can begin to add retention. And what retention does, it builds up that energy, the prana, even more within your system. So now, once we've done the pranayama, what meditation aid are you going to use? Because it's very difficult to sit there and tell the mind to stop thinking. Try it. Sit down for a minute or two and try not to think. Very difficult to do. So you want to replace all your thoughts with one thought. And that one thought you're going to give all the attention to, and what it does is you're empowering your energy to think of that one thought, which burns out all other thoughts eventually. So Patanjali talks about a number. He doesn't say, oh, this is what you have to do. He talks about a number of techniques and methods that you can do to use for meditation. These are just methods. Once you've achieved self-mastery, once you've achieved mastery over the mind, you don't need to do this anymore, because wherever you go, you will be in meditation. You will have learned to calm and still the mind, and you don't really have to sit in 15 minutes a day to try to do it. This is just training the mind to do this. So Patanjali talks about a number of techniques. And if you're interested in hearing more about these techniques, I suggest you go to the last video I did on samadhis. because in that I finished the first book of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and in that book, Patanjali really gets into the whole point of yoga in the first book. He talks about the theory, he talks about the 5 mental modifications that we have to try to restrain, and then he talks about methods or techniques used to restrain those mental modifications, and there's several that he mentions. One of them being using japa yoga. And japa yoga is using a mala bead. This is a mala bead. It has 108 beads, and that 108 is a very significant spiritual number. This has 108 beads, and you use a mantra, and after you've done your pranayama and you're focusing, you would take one bead and Om Namah Shivaya, the next bead Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah, and keep going. Close your eyes and repeat your mantra with each successive bead. And you can do that, these mala beads, carry them with you. If you wear them, then the vibration of the mantra remains on the beads and surrounds you. So the nice thing about using mala beads is that you also build up a vibration of energy with your mantra, and then if you wear it, that energy also enhances your trying to maintain this restraint on the mind. Remember, yoga is chitta vritti nirodha, the restraint of the modifications of the mind. So we're trying to restrain these 5 mental modifications. We're trying to keep the mind steady, trying to keep the mind calm. So by wearing your mala bead, you're again surrounding yourself with this mantra that will also is also conducive to you maintaining that mental peace. It's probably a good idea not to let other people touch your mantra, touch your beads, your mala beads, because you want to keep that vibration clean and pure. So that's one technique, is to use mala beads. And I started off, I actually do use a mantra, and sometimes it's good to help you focus to use. After a while you can let go of the bead because it's there, you don't have to use it anymore. But initially it's good to have an external device that helps you to stay focused. So I highly recommend that, mala beads, and getting a mantra, Om Namah Shivaya, or even the Om. Repeating the term Om, Patanjali mentions, is a great aid to meditation. Light, thinking about the light that's within your heart, focusing on a brilliant light within the heart. At first you have to imagine it there, but later on you will start to see this brilliant light, and as you keep focusing on and keep going towards that light begins to build and surround you. Some people prefer external techniques. Maybe you had a dream, a beautiful dream that was very uplifting, and you can focus on that. You can focus on one of the 7 archangels. If you want healing, you could focus on Raphael and the color green and this angel if you're looking for healing. He mentions a lot of techniques, and he doesn't say that there's any one particular that's more beneficial than the other, because everybody's different and everybody has a unique way of approaching the divine. So he mentions a number of techniques, and he doesn't say, well, you have to do this one. He just says these are the techniques. But the thing is, though, he does emphasize sticking with one technique, because you don't want to kind of dig little holes here and there. You want to see how far the rabbit hole goes. And if you keep trying different techniques and different methods, you're not going to stick to one that's going to do. It doesn't really matter what you choose, because the point is this is just something you're choosing to help focus the mind. It's like medication for the mind. You know, painkillers are painkillers, right? And they all work as painkillers, but some are more suited for others. So that's kind of what it is. And he mentions a lot of techniques: the inhalation and exhalation of breath, the focusing on the breath. As we inhale, so. As we exhale, hum. That's another meditation technique. As we inhale, we think so, hum. See, that's a meditation technique. And I strongly recommend that you go to Patanjali's work or listen to my video, because I do mention the techniques that he suggests. And finally, he says anything that's uplifting, anything that's spiritually uplifting, is a useful technique for meditation. Okay? So, note that I have a candle here. That's one of the things you could do when you're beginning meditation. One of the things you could do is use a candle. Because what a candle will do is you have a physical object, especially if you do have a tendency to be distracted, easily distracted. You have a physical object, and the flame isn't showing because my candle's gone down a bit, but what you want to do is like focus on that flame, right? That's an uplifting thing. A flame is very uplifting. Focus on that flame. This is also called Tratak, one of the 6 chakriyas of yoga. Focus on that flame, and then when the eyes get a little strained, close the eyes and see the flame here. When the mind starts to wander again, open up the eyes and look at the flame. That's also a very useful method for meditation. Okay, so I'm just going to take you through what I think is a useful routine to set yourself up to do meditation. And one of the things you can do is repeat the holy Om 3 times before you begin. Light some candles, use some incense. Incense always eliminates any negative vibes in the area, in the room. We all have, our moments. And if you go to temples and stuff, they're always burning incense because incense purifies the ethers. And if we've had fights or negativity, those things can remain in the ethers. And incense purifies all that. If you go to a Native American ritual, they use sage and cedar and an eagle feather, and they'll smudge your aura. They'll take this sage and cedar in a conch shell and an eagle feather, and they'll smudge your aura to purify your aura. The sweat lodge, they do a lot of that before you enter the sweat lodge. It's a purification technique. Well, burn some incense, light some candles, whatever. If Lord Jesus is the manifestation of God that you would like to worship, or Krishna, or Lord Shiva, any of these, Allah, any of these aspects or manifestations of God are relevant to, if you prefer to have a picture, anything that's conducive to higher thinking. That's what you can do. So there's also, what I usually do is sometimes I begin with 3 sets of Om, and then I repeat the Mahamrityunjaya mantra, the life-giving mantra. I use that a lot when I got very ill after coming back from Japan. And I think it's a very powerful, one of the most powerful mantras you can repeat. So I would begin with 3 Oms, and sometimes I would say the Om Triambakam Nijamahe. This is the Mahamrityunjaya mantra. Om Triambakam Nijamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Urva Rukamiva Bandhanan Mritur Mukshya Mamritat Svaha. We worship the all-seeing one, fragrant he nourishes bounteously. From the fear of death may he cut us free to realize immortality. So that's a great mantra if you're suffering from illness or you're in terminal cancer, because it helps us to realize the self. So it's also, you could say that mantra. At one point I repeated that mantra, which is a long mantra, but I was repeating it 108, using this, I was repeating it 108 times. And it was very, very comforting mantra. If you've had a bad dream, a negative dream, repeat the mantra. So, I'm just going to do a little demonstration now of the yoga that you can do. So I'm going to begin with 3 Oms. I'm going to say the Om Triambakam. And then I'm going to do a round of Kapalabhati, and then I'm going to show Vastrika, I'm going to do retention, and then I'm going to do Nadi Suddhi. And that should take me into my meditation. Now, to begin with, you have to be easy on your mind. You cannot say, okay, I'm going to sit down and meditate for an hour. The mind will rebel. The mind is separate from you. The mind is like an unruly child, and you can't force it to do anything. It'll snap back. So you might begin with 5 minutes, you might begin with 10 minutes. 10 minutes of meditation is pretty good to begin with. If you can meditate for 10 minutes, that's perfectly fine. And you slowly want to build up. So let's begin. I'm going to do 3 Oms and the Om Triambakam. Now we'll begin the pranayama. Exhale. Inhale. First I'll do Bhastrika. Sharp exhalation. You want to exhale forcefully, and then automatically you inhale. Try to keep the eyes closed to conserve prana. You're trying to go within. If you're just beginning, you can do 50 of those 3 times, so 50 contractions. And then slowly exhale, inhale, and start again. If you have been practicing pranayama, Kapalabhati, for quite some time, and then you can do the advanced form Bhastrika. And actually, the advanced form Bhastrika, sometimes I'll just do it for an hour. And as I'm doing it, I'm repeating my mantra. It's very effective for really, because you're doing 2 techniques at the same time. You're doing this Pratyahara and then you're repeating your mantra. It's very, very powerful technique. So exhale. This is the advanced form Bhastrika. I usually continue it, just continue it. I'll just keep going with very slow breaks and just maybe keep going. I worked for about an hour with just little breaks in between in that hour. But what you do is you can do very fast, rapid diaphragmatic breathing, Bhastrika, and then begin to do retention. So exhale, inhale, and begin. Exhale, inhale, and now I'm going to apply retention if you've been doing it for a while, and that will build up the prana even more. So for retention, we're applying we're applying all 3 locks: the Jalanda Bandha lock, the Uddiyana Bandha lock, and the Mala Bandha lock. And because it's very important that you lock here, otherwise, if any of the air escapes, the pressure will cause problems with the ears. So you have to make sure that your chin comes down. Raise your chest up, stick your abdomen up and back towards the sternum, and with the anal sphincter, you're kind of drawing it up and closing it. So you're drawing everything up, and this is up and back towards the sternum, and then you're dropping the chin. Okay, so I'm going to try that again. I'm going to be doing another round of Bhastrika. Exhale, inhale. Exhale, inhale, and apply the locks. Slowly exhale Okay, so that is the first breathing technique called Kapalabhati. Start off with 3 rounds. Maybe just start off, if you've never done this before, start off with 5 minutes of just the beginner's Kapalabhati. Work up to about 50 contractions. If you feel comfortable, do more. When you've worked up to about 100 contractions 3 times, you can then apply retention. But that should be done after you have succeeded in moving from the beginner Kapalabhati to Bhastrika. Okay? So now I'm going to do alternate nostril breathing. So perform that first, and then do the nostril, because that will then equalize the breath, right? You just cleansed out. Kapalabhati cleans out everything. So if you've had a really stressful day and you can't stop thinking about it, that is one of the best things to do, because it just completely cleans all that out. And then it also works at cleaning out the deeper layers of memories, the samskaras. It also helps to do that. That alone is a technique for realization, and that's what happened to me. I was doing so much of it that it just happened. Totally unexpected, it just happened. So, alternate nostril breathing. You want to perform Vishnu Mudra. Okay, so you take your 2 fingers, the middle finger and the index finger, and you drop them. Okay, and you have the thumb and you have the ring finger. Okay, that's Vishnu Mudra. You want to place the thumb on the right nostril and exhale. First inhale, then exhale, then inhale, and then close off the nostril. Exhale, inhale, close off the nostril. Release the ring finger. Exhale, inhale, close off the left nostril. Release the thumb. Exhale, inhale. Now you want to create a kind of balance. So if you're inhaling for 5, exhale for 10. If you're inhaling for 2, exhale for 4. You want to build up to about, you want to have a 2-to-1 ratio. And so just begin with that. You, again, Vishnu Mudra, close off the right nostril. You can begin by breathing in. Breathe in. Close off the right nostril. Exhale through the left. Inhale through the left. Close off the left nostril with the ring finger. Release the thumb. Exhale through the right. Inhale through the right. Close off the thumb. Release the ring finger. Exhale, inhale. Count. Om 1, Om 2, Om 3, Om 4 for each second you're doing your inhalation, exhalation. Okay, now that is the beginner, and 15 minutes of that. I'd say about 15 minutes, because it's pretty powerful for calming your mind down. And if your mind is particularly active, you may want to do more. Okay, so 15 minutes of that. And then once you've established probably a 10-20 ratio, where you are exhaling for 10, exhaling for 20 quite comfortably, then you can begin to add retention. So after the last exhalation, you retain the same locks. You do the same locks, Tilanda Bandha lock, Uddiyana Bandha lock, and Mula Bandha lock. You do all those locks, and you can retain for 20 minutes.
Seconds.
Build up retain for 20 minutes. I do 15 minutes. I do an inhalation for 10, an exhalation for 20, and I may hold for 20 to 30 seconds. So, and I continue that for about 15, 20 minutes. So you slowly build up, always slowly build up. So this is what it would look like. Exhale. First, breathe in. Take a deep breath. Exhale. Inhale. If you're a beginner, close it off and exhale. But if you've been doing it for a while, retain. And exhale. Inhale. Retain. And exhale, inhale, and so forth. By that point, you are more or less already in a very calm state of mind. So then you can begin whatever technique that you've chosen to use, you can begin that for your meditation. Okay? So again, twice a day, if you can. Eventually this practice will begin to fill up your life. You'll find that you're just calmer in situations. If someone has really pushed your buttons, start repeating your mantra. Instead of getting angry and, I get calls from my son, he's 24, and I get calls from him, and he calls me all the time, he calls me every day, and it's like, I really want to just punch this person, what they did. John, take your breath, just take a deep breath, repeat your mantra. It'll completely neutralize the stress that you feel. So eventually this practice will become your life, and you can go about your life feeling peaceful and serene all the time. Now, sitting in an upright position, why? Well, if you're laying down, you may fall asleep, huh? I remember when I started meditating about 30 years ago, I found it really hard to do it. And it just made me so calm and sleepy, and I just would fall asleep. But that's a mental modification. You don't want that to happen. So there are times that after your meditation, just lay down in Savasana, and that's why I think it's so good to meditate before you go to sleep. And once you've done, then you can lay down and have a wonderful, peaceful sleep, because you've just calmed your whole mind down. You're going to have a very lovely sleep. So any questions that you may have on this, please feel free to email me. As I said, today is the day before Halloween. Today is Diwali Day, which is the Festival of Lights in India. It's an ideal time to start your practices. So begin today and make a commitment to yourself that you are going to keep up this practice because you're worth it. You're worth it, and peace and happiness are your birthright, and you deserve to feel that way all the time. And once you get to yourself, once you've passed through and the meditation leads you to yourself into Samadhi, you will see that you were really always happy and always peaceful and always content with just being yourself. Namaste, and have a wonderful week ahead of you.